So the question is, when I, go in and I speak to whether it's a Nike or a Google, or if it's an association, is how can we cultivate the mindset of exponential growth and success so that no matter the external circumstance, we're continuing to grow not only this year, but year over year.
Today's guest on the Keynote Curators podcast is Alex Banayan. Alex is the youngest best-selling author in American history. He's a leading expert in high performance and personal development. In this conversation, you're going to hear the phrase, the third door. This is the title of his book, but it's also a framework for how people can grow, expand, and flourish when it seems like there's no alternative available or solution that's attainable. Alex shares his journey, really his quest on how he developed this methodology and this framework. It's a fascinating conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it because you're here to grow and learn and develop. Thanks for being with us, and we appreciate you joining us on the Keynote Curators podcast. Well, welcome to today's version of Curated Insights, our podcast, and our special guest, Alex. I'm just going to leave it up to you. Can you introduce yourself? We're just so happy to have you here. I could say so many things about you, but let me just leave it in your hands. How would you like to be introduced?
I appreciate that. My name is Alex Banayan, and I am the author of the book, The Third Door, which is an international bestseller, which focuses on the mindset of success of the world's most iconic leaders. So for business, I interviewed Bill Gates; for music, Lady Gaga; science, Jane Goodall; poetry, Maya Angelou; Quincy Jones, Steve Wozniak, Larry King, Jessica Alba. It's been this really exciting journey. And to me, in addition to being a writer, my heart and soul is a keynote speaker. So I've been a professional speaker since 2013, so about 9 years now. And it's my favorite thing about life, being able to go to events and share the lessons of this journey and interact with human beings and see their eyes light up. Because writing at times can be very much a solitude practice. So keynote speaking is what fills my soul because you see eyes literally light up in front of you. So it's, to me, the luckiest job on earth.
And being there in person and having that immediate feedback really is an electric and dynamic aspect of it. But I want to go back before you started speaking and talk about the third door. Not even necessarily the book, Alex, the origin of the idea, the title. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the premise of the title is that I spent 7 years tracking down and learning from the world's most successful leaders. And after interviewing all of them, I came to a realization that every single one of them treats life and business and success just like a nightclub. And the analogy that came to me is that there's always the first door, the main entrance where the line curves around the block where 99% of people wait around hoping to get in. And then there's the second door, the VIP entrance, where the billionaires and celebrities go through. And for some reason, school and society has this way of making us feel like those are the only two ways in. You either wait your turn or you're born into it. But what I've learned, and what I'm sure you've seen in your own career, Seth, is there's always the third door. And it's the entrance where you jump out of line, run down the alley, bang on the door 100 times, crack open the window, go through the kitchen. There's always a way in. And it doesn't matter if that's how Bill Gates sold his first piece of software, how Steven Spielberg became the youngest director in Hollywood history. They all took the third door. So that's not only the title of the book, that's really the energy I try to inject into audiences when I'm with them in person.
And it's interesting because the origin of that idea is, it's a great observation. And I think innately, as you say it, our listeners hear, oh yeah, it's not just binary. It's not just wait in line, wait your turn, or you're born into it, or somehow you've earned your way into the second door. Of course, there's a third door, but we're not always conscious of it. We see what's in front of us and we play with the hand that's dealt, or we deal with the cards that we have at the moment. What was the third door for you?
Oh, wow. If I had to go back to my earliest part of the journey.
So we're saying then that there were many third doors.
Oh my gosh. There have to be,
Yeah.
There have to be. What I've learned is that no matter what industry you're in, if you're trying to start something new, if you're trying to grow your career, you don't have much of an option. You either find that third door or you sit around sulking. And to me, by necessity, I had to take some third doors myself. When I started this journey all the way back, I was a freshman in college. And I was sitting in my dorm room bed, staring up at the ceiling, going through the what do I want to do with my life crisis. And to understand why I was going through it, you have to understand that I'm the son of Persian Jewish immigrants, which pretty much means I came out of the womb. My mom cradled me in her arms, and then she stamped doctor on my behind and sent me on my way.
Right.
And
And if that didn't work, some other professional services.
Right, I could fall back on being a lawyer as plan B.
Right.
Doctor, lawyer, or outcast. I can pick which one I wanted. So growing up, I was the pre-med of pre-meds. I took all the biology classes, studied hard for the SATs. I even went to pre-med summer camp. And by the time I got to college, I remember lying there on my dorm room bed, looking at this towering stack of biology books, feeling like it was sucking the life out of me. And at first I assumed, maybe I'm just being lazy. But eventually I began to wonder, maybe I'm not on my path. Maybe I'm on a path somebody's placed me on and I'm just rolling down.
Now, Alex, let me just ask you right there, because, for those of us that have been fortunate enough to go to university and be in a dorm and have a bed in a dorm and be able to contemplate this, were you always introspective? Were you always contemplative? I think that's how you say it. Were you always kind of questioning that, or was it an abrupt inflection point, a flash point?
Yeah. One of the people I interviewed on this journey said something that stayed with me forever. He said, if you're not going through the what do I want to do with my life crisis every 10 years, you're not living. And the reason I love that so much is it actually gives you a little permission to realize you're not crazy, wondering what's next. And again, I think right now with, the Great Resignation, the Great Reshuffle, and everything we're seeing an entire society asking what's next, particularly when it comes to our careers. So in my dorm room, though, it was my first time. So it was terrifying because I didn't have any resources. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't know if what I was feeling meant that I was defective in some ways.
Right.
And I remember the thought that came to me, Seth, was, like I said, maybe I'm not on my path. Maybe I'm on a path somebody's placed me on and I'm just rolling down.
Well, and honestly, Alex, I mean, look, I have one of my children is 18. She's a freshman, and not every 18, 19-year-old, whether they're in a dorm or wherever they are, is introspective enough and has that level of self-awareness or consciousness. So, that's a muscle in itself. That's why I was curious the origin of that.
I appreciate
nurtured?
that. And it's something I've leaned into even more. I just didn't know it at the time.
Okay.
And at the time, I knew I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. But the bigger question that came to me is, how did all the people who I looked up to, how did they do it? How did Bill Gates sell his first piece of software when nobody knew his name? How did Lady Gaga get a record deal without a single hit under her belt? These are the things they don't teach you in school. So I just assumed there had to be a book with the answers.
Yeah.
So Seth, I was going to the library and just ripping through business books and biographies and self-help books, assuming there had to be a book, not on a particular age in life, but really a stage. When you have a big goal, you have a big dream, and no one's taking your calls, no one's taking you seriously, how do you find a way to break through? And eventually, I was left empty-handed. And that's when my naive...
That's the booby prize.
Right. And that's when my naive 18-year-old thinking kicked in. I thought, well, if no one's written the book I'm dreaming of reading, why not write it myself? I thought it'd be super simple. I thought I would just call Bill Gates, interview him, interview everybody else, and I'd be done in a few months. Right. That I thought would be the easy part. The hard part, I figured, and this is where my third door came in, my first real big one, was I needed some money to fund this journey. I was buried in student loan debt. I was all out of bar mitzvah cash. So there had to be some way to make some quick money. So 2 nights before final exams, I'm in the library doing what everyone does in the library right before finals.
Crams.
I was on Facebook. And I was on Facebook and I saw somebody offering free tickets to the game show, The Price is Right. And I was going to school in Los Angeles, not too far from where the show films. And the show was filming the next day. And my first thought was, what if I go on the show and win some money to fund this book? Not my brightest moment. Plus, I had a problem. I had never seen a full episode of the show before. I'd seen bits and pieces.
Right. You know what it is.
Yeah, I knew what it is. I'd seen bits and pieces when I was a little kid. I'd never seen a full episode before. So I told myself it was a dumb idea and to not think about it. But I don't know if you've ever been in a position where it feels like no matter how ridiculous an idea, for some reason, keeps clawing itself back into your mind. So almost to prove to myself that this was a bad idea. I remember I was sitting at this round wooden table in the corner of the library, and I took out my spiral notebook and I wrote best and worst case scenario to prove to myself this bad idea. And I made a chart and I wrote worst case scenarios: fail finals, get kicked out of pre-med, lose financial aid, mom stops talking to me, no, mom kills me. There was about 20 cons,
There were 20 things just for mom.
about 50. And the only pro was maybe win enough money to fund this dream. And it's almost as if somebody had tied a rope around my gut and was slowly pulling in a direction.
Mm.
So that night, I decided to do the logical thing and pull an all-nighter to study. But I didn't study for finals. I studied how to hack The Price is Right. And I went on the show the next day and did this ridiculous strategy and ended up winning the whole showcase showdown, winning a sailboat, selling that sailboat, and that's how I funded the book. And that's how the whole journey set off.
Yeah, it seems as it rolls off your tongue. I mean, this is years ago and it's a whole nother lifetime ago, and it seems so linear, but it really isn't. There's a lot of texture, and it's not linear by any sense. The through line is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the trusting of yourself, the taking the risk, and the context was not escaping pre-med, but being pulled towards this bigger idea and this bigger vision. And that's where I want to ask you my next question. And I don't know if that resonates with you, what I said, but that's part of what I took away. There's so many things you can take away from the story. That's why, as a speaker, Alex, it's cross generations, it's cross industries, why this message and this idea, and not just the third door, but your whole experience really does resonate with conference attendees and meeting planners that hire you, because there's a universality around it. But today, Alex, social media, primarily social media, but really work from home, hybrid working, the pandemic, everything has been, God, the word is so overused, disrupted. Just follow me for a second on this. We're oversaturated. 20 years ago, 20-year-olds, kind of, I wouldn't say conventional, but you would move on and get a career. Now people are looking for more meaning. They're looking for how they can contribute and make a difference and have it all and not have these 60-hour work weeks. And that in itself is kind of a third door. And with, for example, every service now is commoditized. It's reduced down to its lowest possible price. Even products are commoditized. People are shopping because of the internet. You have access, you have direct access, and the cost of entry into something is zero or almost zero. And I would take the case, and this isn't me kind of kissing your butt, but a third door mindset, dare I say, is almost requisite for people to flourish in today's economy, in today's world, in today's desire, if you will, to have that balance, to have people go for what they want to go for, make a difference, and also not destroy themselves along the way, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Does that communicate?
I think that's hits it right on the head, because the reality is, especially now more than ever, you can't control the external factors that are going to be affecting your business. You can't control the economy. You can't control, in some ways, even the sentiment of your consumers and your clients. So the question is, when I go in and I speak to, whether it's a Nike or a Google, or if it's an association, is how can we cultivate the mindset of exponential growth and success, so that no matter the external circumstance, we're continuing to grow, not only this year, but year over year. And one of the benefits of spending over 12 years sitting down and interviewing directly the people who have grown objectively the most, their careers have had the biggest exponential growth. What you can do is you can take from all of these different industries, these stories and these mindsets, and distill them in a way that, in 30 minutes or an hour, people can have a tangible transformation in how they view not only their own career, but how they're going to interact moving forward.
Yeah. And look, you have Lady Gaga, you have Bill Gates, and the list goes on. And that cachet, Alex, gives validity, right? It gives a certain automatic authority, if you will. So you and I are out here, and we're not, Lady Gaga or Bill Gates, and we're rowing our own boat, and we're making our difference. And, there's ups and downs on the roller coaster. When you're looking to extract, not a mere mortal like myself, I'll speak for myself, but somebody of that ilk, Bill Gates, if you will, Lady Gaga, and all the others, How do you separate kind of a little bit of that being in awe about the star and
Mhm.
then really extracting and distinguishing, taking away what is that core virtue or virtues? What is that essence that not only for you personally, but that you can then borrow and frame it up in a way that makes a difference in your writings, in your books, and in your projects?
I think there's three ways that I really communicate that, whether it's in a book, but keynotes are a great example because in the events industry, that's important. It's important to make sure that whatever topic you're talking about, whether it's macroeconomics or the mindset of success, no matter your topic, it connects with the listener in real time. So, the three ways that I've learned to do it is number one, through really entertaining stories. If people are laughing, and the way I measure the success of a keynote, I love a standing ovation, but what I love even more than a standing ovation is when all of the blue lights of people's phones, that every keynote starts with people checking a quick text, when all of those blue lights go away, all the laptops get shut, all the phones get put away, because that's the real proof that you have unified the group and have essentially turned the event on. So that to me, the highest key indicator of a successful keynote.
Sure.
So that's number one. I always try to plan things, not in graphs or data, but in really fun, entertaining stories. Because if people are laughing, if they're on the edge of their seat, they're learning, but they don't even know they're learning. They think it's their idea to write that quote that I just said down on their paper. They don't know that I've spent years and years perfecting it and making sure that it comes at just the right
Yeah.
time, but it just feels natural. It doesn't feel scripted. It doesn't feel like they're watching a PowerPoint presentation. So that's number one. Number two is customization. And every single group in their own way needs something sometimes a lot different, but and many times, even if it's just slight nuances. 2 days ago, I was in Orlando speaking to an association, and the association, that event in and of itself, it was an opening session keynote with, I think, about 1,400 people in attendance. And almost all of them were owners of family businesses. And because of that, the type of questions and the type of topics were different. When I'm speaking to Merrill Lynch, it's different than when I'm talking to owners of family businesses.
Of course.
And this association, we leaned into different areas of success. I can just say the thing I ended on was the idea of how do you redefine success and how do you find your own definition and make sure you're achieving that. And I use a interview I did with Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Alba Computers, to really bring that to life. So that's number two, to make sure you really know your audience and you make sure you're sharing it with them, not in a way that's pandering, but actually in a way that's really thoughtful to their lived experience. Right. And that's why, to me, the pre-event call is like the most important part of a keynote, because that's where you really get the upper hand advantage to know who the audience is.
That's right.
And what they care about. The third and final thing that to me really brings it home to, again, answer your question, how do you make sure these aren't these big, pie in the sky ideas, but actually tangible takeaways? To me, the secret sauce, and I know it's different for different speakers, but for me, it's that Q&A at the end. Because that's where it becomes not just me speaking to the audience, I'm speaking with them.
Right.
And it's almost like a tango. They move left, I move left. They move right, I move right. And it's sort of, and my favorite is when event planners tell me, we wish we would have done the Q&A for 2 hours.
Right.
Because the reality is sometimes Q&As with other topics can fall flat. But what's amazing about the third door is there is hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of stories and lessons and insight. And what's fun is every unique audience asks completely different questions.
Yeah.
And I get to many times, go into the audience, with my microphone, have the spotlight follow me, give high fives, and really, to me, it just brings the whole event to life. They're asking what they're curious about. And again, sometimes like the event I did 2 days ago, they were asking questions about family. They were asking questions about sacrifice. They were asking questions about redefining success. But again, on the other side of the spectrum, when I'm working with financial advisors, they're asking about how do you cold email? How do you break through doors? How do you get meetings with clients who don't want to meet with you? And what's great about the third door is it has this breadth and depth to go into those topics in a very significant way.
Yeah, I mean, Q&A in itself often is the richest. There are moments, and this is an outlier, but where it can go sideways, where somebody's question turns into a monologue.
I, knock on wood, the luckiest thing of my career is I've been doing this, like I said, for 10 years. I
Yeah.
have, thank God, knock on wood, I'm afraid to jinx it.
Right.
Never had one moment without hands in the air and without it going well.
Yeah. Well,
but again, knock on wood.
well, look,
I take the job serious.
look, Alex, I mean, you're a great speaker, and I know that. I know that as a hard fact. So you create a space where it's safe for people to reach out, to ask a question. And like you said, what's rich about it is that it's stuff that they're working on right now, or that's really important to them right now in the moment. And I would take the case, you can have a speaker and you can do a controlled Q&A, or bring up a moderator that might be questions submitted. You could have a whole moderated conversation, which is then a little bit more direct, and there's a lot of value in that. Or you can take the third door and just do a Q&A.
You get me. You get me.
Yeah. And have it roll out that way. And it is, I just want to not let it pass by. I want to move on to some other questions, but honestly, I take my morning walk, and I was preparing in my mind for our conversation and for some other recordings that I'm going to be doing. And I was focusing on the pre-event call.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, either speakers or clients feel that there's something missing on that. And it really is an area, and everybody has the best intention. Either the client is so focused on the nuts and bolts and the technical aspect of it, and where the room is and what time is the sound check, as opposed to really getting related and connected. And while it's important for the logistics, those can often be handled offline. That's just a side note for me. I know you like to talk to as many people as possible. You like to get the mood of the situation, of the company or the organization, the mood of the industry, what to avoid, what to focus on, if there's any messaging or initiative. So I know how important that is for you. And then the Q&A kind of brings it all together.
For me, I know it's very nerdy for me, but it sounds like you and I are in a similar boat where we like to nerd out on these things. And, with a pre-event call, it took me many years when I was starting out and speaking to realize it's not just another step in the process. It's one of the most important. I really have, a lot of respect for event planners. They're pouring their hearts out for a whole year for this singular event. And many times it's leading an entire team around this singular moment. So there's this wealth of information, and they know the audience sometimes better than the audience knows the audience.
That's right.
And to me, to be able to talk with them is sort of like, again, getting this like inside baseball. Where are people at? How was last year's event? What tone did you lead on? And my favorite question of a pre-event call, of course, first they talk about logistics and we go through that. And then I get to ask questions on my own. And the question I love to ask is, how do you want the audience to feel at the end of the keynote? Because look, at that point, if we're at a pre-event call, they know my material, they've done the contracts, they've picked the keynote topics, they know what I'm going to talk about. But to me, so much of the customization is knowing what the intention is of how they want the audience to feel. And I get the most beautiful, insightful answers. So to me, that question is sort of the holy grail, which is, how do you want the audience to feel at the end of that hour keynote? And then from there, as a speaker, I can work back and build out the keynote and, make requests and recommendations to make that possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a North Star, but by which to navigate, really,
Exactly.
Bringing us all the way back to the sailboat, your origins. Alex, I deal with speakers all day, every day. It's what I do. And I read the books, and I watch videos, and I listen to speeches in person. I read speeches and the source material, from your life experiences. Sure. So you've had this great fortune to be able to sit face to face and interview these people, not necessarily a rapid fire session, but what have been some of the most surprising revelations or most surprising things that you've discovered, interviewing this holy host of variety of people?
I'd say there's been a lot of things. And, with every single person, there was a different takeaway. With Quincy Jones, the, famous music producer, it was about understanding the mindset of how success and failure are not opposites. They're actually different sides of the same coin. They're both a result of the same thing. They're both a result of trying. So the opposite of success isn't failure. The opposite of success is not trying. And with Larry King, we talked about, I learned lessons about perseverance and resilience that I couldn't have imagined he would be teaching me. With Jessica Alba, we talked about some of the most heart-wrenching parts of life, which is facing your biggest fears and using them, not hiding from them, but using them to launch your next endeavor. So every single different person had a unique insight that was so unique to them, but also wasn't the most obvious thing. I mentioned Steve Wozniak earlier. You would think the co-founder of Apple would talk about technology and innovation, but his real lesson was about redefining success. And what I've learned about all of these icons is that behind their public image, there's a human being that has things they care about deeply. And my job when I was interviewing them was to give them the space to let that side of them come out. And the lessons are more profound because of that.
Yeah. And that's what you do as a speaker, and what I do bringing you into my clients is in that space of the presentation that there's reflection or freedom or a inspiration to be able to go out and unconstrained express and explore yourself, to create a new iteration, to reinvent, to find your own third door. So it's really cool. I want to ask you, what are you working on right now that's exciting you, that has you really lit up?
I am right now working on book number 2. It's still very much under wraps, but I'm working very hard on it. And thankfully, what I love about the speaking world is I get to interact with people, test out the idea, share things exclusively if they're private events. So it's really fun to, again, not be holed up the entire time, but to be out in the world and traveling and sharing it with audiences, because that's what fills my cup. So that's what excites me the most.
And I could see how it works together, writing the book and then being out and, I'm not saying half baked, trying on some new ideas that you fleshed out, and kind of see how not only it relates to the people that are in attendance, but how is it
Totally.
resonating for you as you're delivering it?
Totally. So for me, when it comes to the main stand and deliver part of the keynote, it's always the tightest material that I've years and years and years and years perfecting. But in the Q&A, sometimes you get this curveball question that the only way to answer it is to say, you know what? Just last month, I developed this new concept. Tell me how this resonates. And then when you see their eyes light up, you've hit the bullseye.
Right. Let's finish on this one, Alex. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and we try to keep them to a point where we always want to kind of come back for more. So that's my backhanded way of an invitation, open-ended invitation
with
down the
you,
road.
I'm always game.
Because we haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg. But it would be an understatement to say that the panorama of the event landscape, the industry, event production, meeting professionals and what they do has changed. Saying it's turned upside down is not even getting close to the change that's happened. Coming back after the shutdowns, after pandemics, after a lot of virtual meetings, which was interesting, and another third door, if you will. Coming back, you were just in Orlando, and I know you shared with me you've been doing a whole bunch of other in-person events. What are you seeing that is new, that's different, that's appealing, that demonstrates a shift and a transformation in the industry?
I was just talking to a fellow author a couple days ago, and we're talking about how he was mentioning the fact that a lot of people talk about post-traumatic stress. A big life event happens that shatters your understanding of the world, and it leaves these very intense scars. At the same time, there's a concept in psychology that's not talked about as often publicly, but it's post-traumatic growth. And I think in the events industry, particularly when it comes to keynote speaking at conferences, associations, and private companies, we're seeing, at least I'm seeing anecdotally as I'm at these events, on the event side, this sense of post-traumatic growth, where people are like, the machine is even more well-oiled. It's even tighter. The event hosts are more eager. The audiences are more present. The AV teams are more happy to be on some. The speakers are more eager to jump on that stage. And, while the past couple of years, I don't wish it upon anyone, I, wish to repeat it. Coming out of it, I'm just seeing even more understanding on all ends of the stakeholders, audiences, event hosts, event planners, speakers, even deeper understanding of the value of an in-person meeting. Because at the end, we're in a human industry. We're not widgets being spit out of an assembly line.
That's right.
Yeah. That's why we all got into this. It doesn't matter if you're on the speaking side, on the event planning side, on the bureau side, on the attendee side. People go to events because they like human beings, period. And that magic, I think, not only has not diminished, it's grown. And
Yeah,
that's
no,
a beautiful thing.
that's interesting. Post-traumatic growth. And I think that laser focus and that exacerbated intensity around some of the nuts and bolts I've seen, less time on stage, more time mixing. Okay. So people have adapted to that. But when there is time on stage, whether it's an executive, a keynote speaker, a panel, what have you, there's a new context, a new focus around.
Yeah,
And
people want to get right to the good stuff now, which is great.
Right. Go right to the good stuff. That's one of my favorite lines when we have people over, whether for a Super Bowl or dinner. I'm like, why are we waiting to serve the best bottle of something or the best piece of the meal late in the night? No. Come in and we're going to stab you with the best stuff right away. Why wait? You know what? Eat the lesser quality stuff later on. Appreciate it right now when we're fresh, when we're clean in the mind, when everybody's ready and ready to go. Don't blow that moment. I think that's something I've seen for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, let's finish on that note. Alex, thanks so much for being on our podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your insight. The third door is a great access. It's a great pathway for us to expand our mindset on what success is, on the notion that there are unlimited avenues to take to success and our self-expression in business, in relationships, in love, in health, in well-being. So thank you so much.
It's such an honor and always a pleasure whenever we get to talk.
If you'd like to learn more about this speaker, visit our website at 𝘞𝘩𝘢𝘯𝘪.com. There you'll find dozens of videos of speakers that are a perfect fit for your event. If you'd like to reach out directly, please click on the link below in the description. My name is Seth Dechtman, and you've been watching Curated Insights.